Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we're diving into the story of Islam in New Zealand. It's a fascinating journey that touches on history, culture, and the experiences of a diverse community in this beautiful country. We'll be exploring how Islam first arrived in New Zealand and how it's grown over the years. We'll look at some numbers to get a sense of the Muslim population today, and then we'll get into the daily lives of Muslims across the country. Of course, no community story is without its challenges, so we'll also talk about some of the issues facing Muslims in New Zealand. Finally, we'll tackle the tough but important topic of Islamophobia and how it plays out in Kiwi society. It's a lot to cover, but I think you'll find it really interesting. So let's get started. The story of Islam in New Zealand is really a tale of migration, cultural exchange, and gradual community building. It all kicks off in the mid-19th century, during a pretty exciting time in New Zealand's history, the Gold Rush era. So picture this. It's the 1850s, words getting out about gold in New Zealand, and people from all over are flocking to try their luck. Among them are a handful of Muslim traders, mainly from India and the Middle East. These guys were probably the first Muslims to set foot in New Zealand. They weren't looking to settle permanently, mind you. Most were just passing through, following the money, you know. For decades after that, the Muslim presence in New Zealand was pretty minimal. You'd have the odd Muslim sailor or trader stopping by, but no real permanent community to speak of. It wasn't until the early 20th century that things started to change. In 1920, we see a bit of a milestone. The first Muslim family to settle permanently in New Zealand arrives. They were the Muhammad family from Gujarat, India. Can you imagine being the only Muslim family in the whole country? Must have been quite an experience. The next big wave comes after World War II. In the late 1940s and 1950s, New Zealand starts accepting refugees from Eastern Europe. Among them are several hundred Muslims from countries like Albania and Yugoslavia. These folks become sort of the pioneers of the modern Muslim community in New Zealand. But the real growth of the Muslim population kicks off in the 1970s. This is when New Zealand's immigration policies start to open up, and we see a significant influx of Muslims from various parts of the world. You've got people coming from Fiji, especially after the coups there in 1987 and 2000. There are immigrants from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Malaysia, Indonesia. Then you've got folks from Middle Eastern countries like Iran, Iraq, and Afghanistan, often fleeing conflicts in their homelands. By the 1980s, the Muslim community is large enough to start establishing more formal institutions. The first purpose-built mosque in New Zealand opens in 1979 in Auckland. It's a big deal, symbolizing that Muslims are here to stay and are becoming a real part of the Kiwi social fabric. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, the community keeps growing and diversifying. You start seeing more converts too, including some Maori and Pakeha New Zealanders embracing Islam. One interesting aspect of this history is how the early Muslim immigrants had to adapt Islamic practices to New Zealand life. For instance, figuring out the correct prayer times at New Zealand latitudes, or sourcing halal food when it wasn't readily available. It's also worth noting that while the majority of Muslim immigrants came for economic reasons or as refugees, some came as part of New Zealand's efforts to attract skilled migrants. So you had doctors, engineers, and other professionals who've made significant contributions to New Zealand society. Today, Islam is recognized as one of the fastest-growing religions in New Zealand. The community has come a long way from those first few traders in the 1850s. It's a vibrant, diverse group that's become an integral part of New Zealand's multicultural landscape. This history really reflects New Zealand's broader story of becoming more diverse and multicultural over time. The Muslim community's journey is, in many ways, a microcosm of New Zealand's evolution as a nation, from a predominantly British colony to the multicultural society it is today. All right, let's dive into the numbers and demographics of the Muslim population in New Zealand. This stuff is pretty interesting when you look at the trends over time. So according to the most recent census data we have, which is from 2018, there were about 57,000 Muslims living in New Zealand. That works out to roughly 1.3% of the total population. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but here's the kicker. It's actually more than triple what it was just 20 years earlier. In the 2001 census, there were only about 23,000 Muslims in the country. So we're talking about some serious growth here. let's break it down a bit further. When it comes to the split between Sunni and Shia Muslims, it's a bit tricky to get exact numbers because the census doesn't ask about specific denominations within Islam. But based on various estimates and community sources, it's safe to say that the vast majority, we're talking probably around 90% or more, are Sunni Muslims. The Shia community is much smaller, likely less than 5% of the total Muslim population. The remainder would be made up of other smaller denominations or people who didn't specify their branch of Islam. Now here's something interesting. The Muslim population in New Zealand is relatively young compared to the general population. The median age for Muslims is about 29, which is quite a bit lower than the national median of 37. This younger demographic could mean we'll see continued growth in the Muslim population in the coming years, even without additional immigration. Speaking of immigration, it's worth noting that the majority of Muslims in New Zealand, about 75%, were born overseas. The largest groups come from countries like Fiji, Pakistan, India, and various Middle Eastern and African nations. But there's also a growing number of New Zealand-born Muslims, including converts. When it comes to ethnicity, it's a really diverse picture. The largest ethnic group among Muslims is actually Asian, which in New Zealand census terms includes people from the Indian subcontinent and the Middle East. They make up about 60% of the Muslim population. The next largest group is Middle Eastern, Latin American, African, at around 25%. There's also a small but growing number of European and Maori Muslims. Geographically, Muslims are mostly concentrated in urban areas. Auckland is home to the largest Muslim community, with about 40% of all Muslims in the country living there. Wellington and Christchurch also have significant Muslim populations. One trend that's been noticed in recent years is an increase in the number of Maori converting to Islam. While the numbers are still relatively small, it's an interesting development that reflects the dynamic nature of religious identity in New Zealand. It's also worth mentioning that these numbers might have changed a bit since the 2018 census. The Muslim population has likely continued to grow, but we won't have official updated figures until the next census results are released. Overall, what these numbers tell us is that while Muslims are still a small minority in New Zealand, it's a rapidly growing and incredibly diverse community. It's a community that's becoming increasingly visible and influential in New Zealand society, contributing to the country's multicultural makeup. Remember though, while these stats give us a good general picture, they don't capture the full complexity and diversity within the Muslim community. Every individual has their own unique story and experience of being Muslim in New Zealand. All right, let's dive into the daily lives of Muslims in New Zealand. It's a pretty diverse picture. You know, Muslims here come from all walks of life and have integrated into Kiwi society in various ways. So, where do most Muslims in New Zealand live? Well, as I mentioned earlier, you'll find the largest concentrations in the big cities. Auckland is the real hub. About 40% of all Muslims in the country call it home. It's got this vibrant Muslim community centered around areas like Mount Roskill and Sandringham. Wellington and Christchurch also have sizable Muslim populations. But you'll find smaller communities scattered across other urban and even some rural areas too. Now, when it comes to daily life, it's as varied as you'd expect in any community. You've got Muslims working in pretty much every sector you can think of. There are Muslim doctors, lawyers, engineers, teachers, shopkeepers, taxi drivers, you name it. Many are small business owners, often running halal butcheries, ethnic grocery stores, or restaurants. These places become sort of unofficial community hubs. You know, education is a big deal in the Muslim community. You'll find a lot of Muslim students in universities across the country. Victoria University in Wellington and the University of Auckland have particularly active Muslim student associations. These groups organize events, provide support, and help create a sense of community for Muslim students. For many Muslims, the mosque is a central part of daily life. New Zealand has about 40 mosques and Islamic centers spread across the country. These aren't just places of worship. They're community centers where people gather for social events, educational programs, and cultural activities. During Ramadan, these places really come alive with nightly prayers and community iftars. Speaking of Ramadan, It's interesting to see how Muslims adapt their religious practices to New Zealand life. The long summer days can make fasting pretty challenging. Some Muslims choose to follow the timings of the nearest Muslim country, while others stick to local sunrise and sunset times. Halal food is becoming increasingly available in New Zealand, which makes daily life easier for observant Muslims. Most major supermarkets now stock halal products, and there are plenty of halal restaurants in the bigger cities. But in smaller towns, it can still be a bit of a challenge. Many Muslims are actively involved in interfaith activities, working to build bridges with other religious communities. You'll often see Muslim representatives at community events or speaking at schools to promote understanding and tolerance. Sports are a big part of life for many Kiwi Muslims. Cricket is especially popular, given the large number of Muslims from South Asian backgrounds. But you'll find Muslims involved in all sorts of sports, from rugby to netball. For Muslim women who choose to wear hijab, it's generally accepted in most workplaces and public spaces. However, some do face challenges or discrimination because of it. On the flip side, you'll see some creative fusion of hijab with traditional Kiwi fashion, like hijabs made from Maori-inspired fabrics. Muslim youth in New Zealand often navigate between their Islamic heritage and Kiwi culture. You'll see this play out in things like music. There are a few up-and-coming Muslim Kiwi rappers, fashion, and social media. It's creating this unique Kiwi Muslim identity. One thing that's pretty cool is the growing number of Maori Muslims. They're creating this fascinating blend of Islamic and Maori traditions. You might see a pauhiri, traditional Maori welcome, at a mosque opening, for instance. Overall, the daily life of Muslims in New Zealand is about balancing religious practices with participation in mainstream Kiwi society. While there are challenges, many Muslims feel that New Zealand's generally tolerant attitude makes it a good place to practice their faith while fully engaging in the life of the nation. All right, let's get into the challenges faced by the Muslim population in New Zealand. Like any minority group, Muslims here deal with a range of issues, some unique to their community and others shared with other immigrant groups. One of the biggest hurdles, especially for new immigrants, is integration. You've got people coming from vastly different cultures trying to find their footing in Kiwi society. Language barriers can be a real issue. Imagine trying to navigate the job market or healthcare system when you're not fluent in English. It's tough, and it can lead to feelings of isolation. Speaking of jobs, employment discrimination is unfortunately still a thing. Some Muslims, particularly those with distinctive names or who wear visible religious symbols like hijabs, report difficulties in getting job interviews or facing prejudice in the workplace. It's not widespread, but it happens, and it can be really disheartening. There's also the challenge of maintaining religious practices in a largely secular society. Finding time and space for daily prayers can be tricky in some workplaces. During Ramadan, fasting while keeping up with work or study commitments can be a real test, especially given New Zealand's long summer days. Education is another area where issues crop up. Muslim parents sometimes worry about their kids losing touch with their cultural and religious heritage. There's a bit of a balancing act between integrating into Kiwi school life and maintaining Islamic values. Some families opt for Islamic schools, but these are few and far between. Then there's the media representation issue. Many Muslims feel that Islam is often portrayed negatively in the news, especially in stories about international conflicts. This can lead to stereotyping and misconceptions about their faith. Housing can be a challenge too, particularly for larger families. Some Muslims have reported discrimination in the rental market, which adds another layer of stress to the already tough task of finding affordable housing in cities like Auckland. Political representation is an area where progress has been slow. While there have been a few Muslim MPs, many in the community feel underrepresented in local and national politics. Youth identity is a complex issue. Young Muslims often find themselves navigating between their parents' cultural expectations and mainstream Kiwi culture. It can lead to a sense of not fully belonging in either world. Health services are generally good in New Zealand, but there are some specific challenges for Muslims. For example, there's a shortage of Muslim mental health professionals who understand the cultural context of their patients. Some Muslim women also report feeling uncomfortable with male healthcare providers which can lead to delays in seeking medical help. Halal food availability has improved a lot, but it can still be an issue in smaller towns or rural areas. This might seem like a small thing, but it can have a big impact on daily life and social interactions. The Christchurch mosque shootings in 2019 were a devastating blow to the Muslim community. While the response from most Kiwis was overwhelmingly supportive, the tragedy heightened fears about safety and Islamophobia. Many mosques had to increase security measures, which some feel detracts from the open, welcoming nature of these spaces. Lastly, there's the ongoing challenge of combating stereotypes and misconceptions about Islam. Many Muslims feel a constant pressure to be ambassadors for their faith, having to explain and sometimes defend their beliefs and practices. Despite these challenges, it's important to note that many Muslims in New Zealand report feeling generally accepted and valued. The country's multicultural ethos and the kindness shown by many Kiwis, especially in the wake of the Christchurch attacks, have gone a long way in making Muslims feel at home. Still, there's work to be done in addressing these issues and creating a truly inclusive society. All right, let's dive into the topic of Islamophobia in New Zealand. It's a complex issue, and like many places, New Zealand has had its struggles with it. First off, it's important to say that New Zealand generally has a reputation for being a tolerant, multicultural society. The country's overall attitude towards Muslims is largely positive. But that doesn't mean Islamophobia doesn't exist. It does, and it's something the Muslim community has had to deal with. Now, when we talk about organized Islamophobia in New Zealand, it's not really on the same scale as you might see in some other Western countries. There aren't any large, well-known anti-Islam organizations operating openly. But that doesn't mean there isn't a problem. A lot of Islamophobia in New Zealand tends to be more subtle. It might show up as casual prejudice, stereotyping, or discrimination in everyday interactions. Some Muslims report experiencing things like hostile stares, rude comments, or being treated with suspicion in public spaces. Women who wear hijabs often bear the brunt of this kind of treatment. Online spaces are where you tend to see more overt Islamophobia. Social media platforms and certain websites have become breeding grounds for anti-Muslim sentiment. It's easier for people to express these views anonymously online, and sometimes these online communities can become echo chambers that amplify Islamophobic ideas. The media plays a role too. While many New Zealand media outlets strive for balanced reporting, there's still a tendency to associate Islam with negative news stories, particularly around international conflicts or terrorism. This can shape public perceptions and feed into stereotypes about Muslims. Political discourse has occasionally veered into Islamophobic territory. Some politicians have used anti-immigrant or anti-Muslim rhetoric to appeal to certain voters. It's not as prevalent or extreme as in some other countries, but it does happen. The Christchurch mosque shootings in 2019 were a horrific manifestation of Islamophobia at its most extreme. It was a wake-up call for many New Zealanders about the dangers of hate and intolerance. The silver lining, if you can call it that, was the overwhelming outpouring of support for the Muslim community in the aftermath. It sparked a national conversation about Islamophobia and led to increased efforts to combat hate speech and discrimination. In terms of combating Islamophobia, there have been various initiatives. The government has taken steps to strengthen hate speech laws and improve reporting mechanisms for hate crimes. There's been a push for more education about Islam in schools and workplaces to combat misconceptions. Interfaith dialogue has been a key strategy. Many Muslim organizations work actively with other religious groups to build understanding and foster positive relationships. Events like Mosque Open Days, where non-Muslims are invited to visit and learn about Islam, have become more common. The media has also made efforts to improve. There's been a push for more diverse voices in newsrooms and more nuanced reporting on issues related to Islam and Muslims. It's worth noting that many Kiwi Muslims report feeling generally safe and accepted in New Zealand, despite the challenges. The response to the Christchurch attacks, where many non-Muslims showed solidarity by visiting mosques, wearing headscarves, or simply reaching out to their Muslim neighbors, was seen as a powerful rejection of Islamophobia. However, vigilance is still necessary. The Muslim community and its allies continue to work on raising awareness, challenging stereotypes, and promoting inclusion. There's a recognition that combating Islamophobia is not just the responsibility of Muslims, but of New Zealand society as a whole. In the end, while Islamophobia remains a concern in New Zealand, there's also a strong countercurrent of tolerance and acceptance. The country's response to challenges like the Christchurch attacks has shown a commitment to protecting and valuing its Muslim citizens. It's an ongoing process, but there's hope that New Zealand can continue to make progress in creating a truly inclusive society for all its diverse communities. Dear brothers and sisters, our journey to the story of Islam in New Zealand ended in this way. Pretty fascinating stuff, right? From those first Muslim traders during the gold rush to today's diverse community spread across the country, it's been quite a ride. I hope this video has given you some new insights into the Muslim experience in New Zealand, the rich history, the vibrant communities, and yes, even the challenges they face. It's all part of the complex, multicultural tapestry that makes New Zealand such a unique place. If you found this interesting and want to learn more about different cultures and communities in New Zealand and around the world, why not hit that subscribe button? I'm always exploring these kinds of stories, and I'd love to have you along for the ride. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and leave a comment below with your thoughts or any questions you might have. Maybe share your own experiences if you're a Kiwi Muslim, or have Muslim friends in New Zealand. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.